What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. Today I'll be looking at a new 5 games list. This one is 5 sci-fi horror games. Now again, this list isn't in any order. I'm just gonna go ahead and list off 5 games that I recommend for you guys if you like sci-fi horror. A lot of these games you probably have heard, but there might be a possibility you haven't. So I suggest you stay till number 1. I actually really do like the sci-fi horror genre. Something about space and creepiness just always gets to me because there's 2 fucking unknowns, so it creeps you out just that much more. Especially if it's done really well, because it can be done pretty badly. I think we've seen that. But today we'll be looking at some of the best, in my opinion. Let's get right into it. Now the first one we'll be looking at is Doom 3. This was a game released in 2005. Now I played this one on the original Xbox back in the day, and it actually scared the hell out of me just because it's so dark and you can't see anything. And the demons actually were pretty freaky for the time. Nowadays, if you play it, might not get much of a scare, but the shooting is actually still a lot of fun. But for sci-fi horror, this will always be on my list, just because of how much it scared me back in the day. Now, a lot of people seen it as not scary or not a Doom game, but I ended up actually really enjoying this one. I've seen a lot of other people on the internet have fond memories of this one too. Now, it does kind of turn more into a shooter game at the end of the game, but in the beginning, there's definitely a lot of real horror sections. I definitely suggest you check this one out if you haven't played it. But whatever you do, make sure you do not play the BFG edition. In my opinion, it actually makes the game worse and loses every horror vibe that the game had. Let's go ahead and get it right on to the next one. Now the next game is Soma. This is actually more of a slow-paced, puzzle-solving horror game. But there are some sections where there's free-roaming enemies that you have to avoid, and it does get pretty creepy. And it does have that really cool sci-fi setting. I don't want to get too far into it or else I'll get into some spoilers. This game was released in 2017 and developed by the same people that made Amnesia, so you know it's coming out of good hands. And like I said earlier, the storyline actually does get pretty crazy. I don't want to go into it at all. But if you're into horror games, especially the more slower paced ones, I definitely say you have to check this one out. You will be doing a little puzzle solving, so if you don't like puzzles, it's okay, they're not too hard. But I spent most of my time just taking in the creepy atmosphere around me and enjoying the storyline as it went on. But I definitely recommend this one. Now this next one is Alien Isolation, probably the best Alien video game out there. Definitely the scariest if you ask me. This is more of a survival horror first-person game, and the alien AI is so good. It can creep up on you, sneak in through vents on you. It almost seems like the AI is actually thinking for itself, which makes the game a lot more creepy than just having a timed jump scare or something jump out at you. And you actually got something that's thinking against you, at least it feels that way. It can bring out a lot of unique and weird situations, I can tell you that. The biggest part that I liked about this game is they actually made a good, scary alien game that kind of plays like the movies, which I think we've been looking for forever. I mean, with Aliens Colonial Marines, we clearly did not get what we wanted. And most of the good other Aliens games are old as hell or a Doom mod. But that's really all I have to say on it. You better check it out for yourself if you like horror games, and we'll just go right into the next one. Now this next one is a classic, System Shock 2, because it just kind of paved the way for all the other sci-fi horror games to come. I didn't actually enjoy this one a lot because it's a lot of old school mechanics, and it's actually pretty clunky, so it didn't scare me too much, but I could definitely see how this could scare people back in the day. It was actually pretty underrated when it was released, but nowadays it gets plenty of love, which it completely deserves. It has a crazy story with a crazy twist. It's honestly up there with the greatest games of all time list, especially for it influencing other games that came along. And it's one of the simplest but best sci-fi horror stories out there. You're on a ship with a bunch of virus-infected crew members that gone crazy. What else can you get? But I'll definitely suggest this one, even if you don't like older games. You can definitely still play through it and have a little bit of fun. But I definitely recommend this, and you should check this one out. Now, last but not least at all is the Dead Space franchise. Probably the most famous sci-fi horror game out there, and one of my favorites. Now, when the first one came out, it actually scared the hell out of me. I didn't actually play the first release as my first Dead Space experience. My first experience was actually on the mobile version, and that one was actually pretty good in itself, especially for mobile back in the day. But once I got my hands on some of the main games, I was scared as hell, I can tell you that. This was a third-person shooter horror game released in 2008. There's actually 3 main games in the series, 1 being my favorite, 3 being my least favorite. I think this game really just hit the sweet spot with sci-fi horror and just did it kind of perfectly. And especially that revealing trailer when it first came out, that was absolutely insane. Now this game was pretty linear, but like I said earlier, everything was pretty much perfect. The scares were well scripted, and it actually builds up the atmosphere before the scares are put on you. It definitely had me feeling freaked out before I even seen the first enemy. There's not much else to say about the Dead Space franchise. I feel like everyone's either played about it or heard about it. But if you're a horror game fan, you've definitely played these ones. But that was my list for 5 sci-fi horror games. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm trying to make more of these top 5 lists on top of my indie horror let's plays. I'm thinking about bringing this into a series. I already had a couple suggestions for more lists, so thank you guys for those comments. I think the next one might be top 5 worst indie horror games. But keep up with the suggestions, comments, likes. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel. And I guess other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.